Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dear friends, this morning we were speaking about the six sense bases and about the arising of feeling or Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling. I don't know if you ever wondered why beings have feeling. For what purpose in nature were we given feeling? And the answer to my mind is related to the idea of taking a human being or a person, or actually a sentient being of any kind, as being an action figure. So a being is defined or described not so much about their identity or their state of existence, their ideas, what they cognize, but really defined by what they do. And then we first evolved the abilities, the capacities to do what we need to do in order to survive and thrive in this world. And then what we perceive, what we experience, what we think, how we cognize, what we identify, our ideas, our philosophy, our culture, all of those things came following along afterwards in support of being able to do the things that we need to do in order to survive and thrive in this world. I kind of developed these ideas, now it's about 15 years ago, when I discovered a great congruence between the teachings of Buddhism and the writings of a non-Buddhist neuroscience scientist called Antonio Damasio, who writes about emotions and consciousness. The Western emotion is not really a term in Pali language. It's not really a term in the Buddhist system that at least that has one word. But in the books that I discovered from this one writer, Antonio Damasio, he defines emotions as including the bodily states, which come to some kind of a change in status, a change in the bodily states, creating a feeling being the first instant where the mind cognizes the change in the body. The change could be like something coming in through a sense gate, or it could be some internal change in the internal balance of this organism. So there's the bodily state, the feeling, and then following on that, perception and volition. All of these changes having a primary purpose of serving the survival of the organism. So whether the emotion is pleasant or unpleasant, we evolved to have different emotions because it's a very, like a rapid, automatic, almost automatic means of responding to our world, are responding to changes in the body to have the arousal that we need to do what we have to do in order to get the things that we need and protect ourselves from danger. There's a kind of a something that's a little bit corresponding between the 5 aggregates in Buddhism and the factors of emotion, according to this to Damasio, which is very interesting. So emotions are fast. That's the great advantage. So if you're in the road and a car is coming down the road, you don't have to really think and ponder and decide whether you should get out of the way. It's just, kind of natural and easy and quick to do so, to do what you have to do. But emotions are also frequently inaccurate. And so because of this, nature has also endowed us with a capacity for restraint, so we can have a little bit more time to gain a more accurate perception of what's going on and to assess whether this emotional response ought to be followed or whether we should ignore it. This whole process, I'm still on to explaining the ideas of Antonio Damasio. And in the book of Sutta references, I give a reference to one of his books in case you're interested. This process evolves into the creation of self. For Damasio, it's kind of like a miracle. It's so marvelous, it's so wonderful that all of this, just reactions of how many atoms and nerve cells and processes and completely physical materialistic things that exist in a human body or in the body of a sentient being somehow creates something that's like a mind, and the mind possesses something that's like a self. So for Damasio, this is the greatest miracle. But for Buddhism, self is a problem because when we have a self, we are doomed to have a failure in each lifetime when that self comes to its demise, the death of the existence within a particular lifetime. In Buddhism, the belief in the self and the craving and clinging, which is leading to this picking up this attachment and this sustaining this delusion about self, are invariably described as harmful, unskillful dhammas, which we are trying to get beyond and learn how to transcend or drop them, or just to go beyond them. But it is also, I think, helpful to see that our natural equipment, even though it can lead us to deluded and unskillful reactions, even though our natural equipment is leading us to being trapped in a delusion of the self, nevertheless, our natural emotional system is beneficial at some level. So even if I'm filled with anger and resentment and really suffering and agony because of feelings of anger and resentment. Nevertheless, like when the baby is crying and mother picks the baby and kind of like holds the baby and is sort of like comforting, and I can take that anger and say, well, there, it's okay, I understand. You just want to be safe. We just want to be safe from danger, and that's what's creating this anger, this reactivity. And so it is good to forgive ourselves because we have so many, what Buddhism is calling unskillful states, unskillful dhammas, and not to be like a Puritan where they're taking an approach of like self-punishing, because we see in ourselves that we have these inner afflictions, or that we have craving and clinging and delusion. Instead, just having that attitude of forgiveness, and in a way sort of like being able to stand back and say, well, it's because of causes and conditions. I took this human birth, and these experiences are part of what comes along with the human birth, without necessarily picking up and perpetuating it. There was one question that came to me by email about the 6 sense bases, and I'll mention that now. They asked how to cultivate mindfulness of the 6 senses in daily life. One thing I would suggest for that is definitely practicing out of doors, not inside of a house or inside of a cave, but go outside, and there are so many more diversity and variety of different inputs coming in through the 5 sense bases, and then it's very natural to just wake up a really strong awareness and see like how many different kinds of sense contacts can be discerned, within a few minutes, or within a time of sitting meditation, or even just briefly standing or sitting for a few minutes outside and seeing, how many different things can be noticed. Labeling is a way of making something more clear, although I don't believe that labeling technique can be a little bit slow, that later on, and when your mindfulness gets to be really sharp and you can just see things directly, you don't need to continue with labeling, but labeling can help. If one is having an experience where it's actually not that easy to get in touch with the senses. This could be your personality, or it could be because you're tired or some other reason, or because you're distracted, that when trying to be mindful of the senses, you're just not able to stay with that. One possibility is it's like you're going up and down the ladder. So you go one step up the ladder to the Vedana, or the feeling, like what's the feeling tone? How do I feel now? How do you feel right now? Okay, you feel good? Feel bad? Feel neutral? And then something happened. I was feeling neutral, and then something happened, and there's a pleasant feeling. So I might recognize the change of the feeling, but I don't know why. But I can kind of, like, if my mindfulness is sharp and I'm staying pretty close to the present moment, I can just look back and I say, okay, where was the contact just then? And I could be, while I was sitting and the bird chirped, or the bird sang, and I recognized, it's spring and it's a warbler, and then I began to feel very happy, because it's something that I like. So I had a pre-existing disposition to like the warbler, and when there was a contact with the ear base, then my mood shifted and I went from neutral to happy. And so if you, here's another example. This happened to me in real life. I was in a meditation retreat once, long ago, before I was wise like I am now. I was in a retreat, being very mindful, and everything was, like kind of neutral or pleasant or unpleasant, but I was just kind of like able to ride the gentle waves of the shifting changes with the body and mind, and to keep my mindfulness together. And then I came into the meditation hall after a break, and somebody was sitting in my place, and they were sitting on my personal cushion. And then that caused a sharp arising of, I'll say, selfishness. So like there was a strong, like a jolt of a kind of like a feeling response, emotional response that was like in a different kind of a domain than what I had been doing before. And so without mindfulness, one might just like follow along the roller coaster of the reactions. But if we're cultivating mindfulness of the sixth sense basis, and we remember to just look back and say, okay, that was a visual. So something struck the eye. And from there was a perception, and the Vedana and the perception came along right after that. And so then, because of being interested and having developed the mindfulness to a faster level, instead of being carried away with emotions, one is interested in observing one's own process. Now, I want to explain to you about craving and clinging, and I'm going to do it by saying something about the number 38 in the middle length discourses, the greater discourse on the destruction of craving, Maha Tanha. So a child is born, they've gained a human form, and as they mature, they play childish games such as toy plows, tip-cat, somersaults, pinwheels, toy measures, toy carts, and toy bows. And this little boy grows up and his faculties mature further. He accordingly amuses himself, supplied and provided, with the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation: sights known by the eye, sounds by the ear, smells by the nose, taste known by the tongue, touches known by the body, that are likable, agreeable, desirable, pleasant, sensual, and arousing. When they see a sight with their eyes, If it's pleasant, they desire it. But if it's unpleasant, they dislike it. They live with mindfulness of the body unestablished and the heart restricted. That restricted heart, or the unrestricted heart, is something that we hear about elsewhere in terms of practicing loving kindness and the Brahma Viharas, practicing kindness that is going to all beings throughout the entire universe without any restriction or any limitation. That's like the boundless meditation. But here we're thinking about the bounded heart and the unbounded heart in terms of being bounded by like and dislike. This person who is unmindful, they don't truly understand the freedom of the heart, freedom by wisdom, where those bad or unskillful qualities could cease without anything left over. They are full of favoring and opposing. They favor what they like, they oppose what they dislike. When they experience any kind of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they approve, welcome, and keep clinging to that feeling. So not only the pleasant feeling, but especially the unpleasant feelings, they cling to it. This gives rise to relishing. Relishing is called nandi. So I was mentioning this morning about the toast. Okay, so if I were an unskillful person and I might grasp after, relish, and think about, how much I like toast. And also, just as possible, I could notice something unpleasant, something I disapprove of, something I dislike, and I could relish holding onto that, thinking and pondering and grasping after the story about that unpleasant thing that's giving me this unpleasant feeling. And this is what a person can become obsessed with, thinking about their enemy. Or even like if you want something and you're not getting what you want, like you're in love and the person is not reciprocating your love in the way you want them to. Or you want your dear ones to be in a certain way, but they're not the way you want them to be. There's some other way. And then the mind can be obsessed with thinking about, if they would only be different than they are. And so then this mental obsession that comes about because the feeling arises, they approve, welcome, and keep clinging to that feeling and relish that feeling. Relishing feelings is grasping, upadana. Grasping is a condition for continued existence. Continued existence is a condition for rebirth. Rebirth is a condition for old age, sorrow, and death. So it's this, you could say that in response to feeling, the initial arousal that's happening, this is called tanha, or craving. The craving is something it's almost not intellectual. It's like it's an initial instinctive reaction, almost before we think about it. It's kind of simple, and it's very natural. Tanha literally means thirst. So if you were an animal and you don't have enough water and your body is not hydrated, then the body begins to feel ill because of the lack of water, the lack of hydration. And then, you come along and you see, I don't know what, a stand where they're selling bottles of water, or you see a stream or a spring or a well or something like that. And then, like, just in anticipation, it's like you almost, it's almost like there's no decision or anything conscious involved with it. You just go for that water because you're thirsty. It's almost like being on automatic. And then when you have the water, if you are thirsty, it's very easy to take a drink of water. If you're not thirsty and you're just trying to keep yourself hydrated as a preventive thing, then you maybe have to be conscious and intentional and realizing, I'm supposed to drink so many glasses of water a day, and I'm doing it on purpose. I'm doing it because I've made a decision to drink water. But when it's in response to physical thirst, then not so easy to control, although you can undo the psychological part of grasping. Then of craving, of tanha. Then this grasping, which is called upadana, that has, besides this initial intuitive reaction, it has more like mental concomitants involved in it. So the relishing, the liking, the picking up, the decision, making a decision, forming a volition, these kinds of mental phenomena come into play when craving matures into grasping. So this is how the mass of suffering originates in this sutta. Then how suffering ceases will be that a person eventually may come to be disillusioned with their ordinary life, and they might have a chance to hear the Buddha's teaching. They might have a chance to undertake the gradual training, listening to the Dhamma, letting go of the most obvious levels of wrong view, all of the the propaganda around wrong view, and seeing the developing the wish of non-harming for oneself or others, developing morality, developing the practice of loving kindness, developing the interest in mental purification, letting go of unskillful mental states, letting go of the hindrances, gaining the bliss of meditation. This is all the gradual training. And as a result of that process, then when they see a sight with their eyes, if it's pleasant, they don't desire it. If it's unpleasant, they don't dislike it. They live with mindfulness of the body established and a limitless heart. So now you can see how the boundless practice of loving kindness is connected to this teaching, because one who is mature in doing loving kindness simply because of the characteristics of another person or of a situation, that dislike is not arising for them. They truly understand the freedom of the heart, freedom by wisdom, where those arisen, bad, unskillful qualities cease without anything left over. This is the state of awakening. Having given up favoring and opposing, when they experience any kind of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they don't approve, welcome, or keep clinging to it. As a result, the relishing of feelings ceases. When that relishing ceases, grasping ceases, and so on. This is how the creating the cause and effect, starting the ball rolling until the entire mass of suffering ceases. So there's one sutta, and it's not a very complicated or difficult sutta. It's one that's rather straightforward, and it gives it to you right there how to understand, especially this linkage from feeling to craving to clinging, and how to unhook yourself from that so that you can experience any kind of feeling without picking it up and being dragged into the process that's going to be perpetuating your suffering. I want to allow time for questions now.